I recently had the chance to sit down with President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine to talk about the viral moment in the Oval Office when he got into a heated exchange, an argument with President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance on February 28th.
We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
he's doing.
I'm not
You're
dictating.
in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
Since that incident, President Zelensky has been very cautious about the way he has talked about it. He actually hasn't said very much. The closest he's come is just saying, let's leave that to history, because he understood about the danger of trying to talk about that incident, potentially making it worse, potentially upsetting President Trump further. President Zelensky understands the stakes here, the importance of keeping President Trump on his side and keeping American support for Ukraine in the war with Russia is really critical. It's a question of survival fundamentally for Ukraine in this war.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank you?
Even today.
You went to.
He was quite cautious in the way he talked about it when we sat down in his office recently. What he said about the meeting in the Oval Office was he was trying to reach beyond the usual ways that people talk to President Trump. He wasn't trying to reach him on the level of flattery or his personal political interests or anything else. He wanted to reach him as a human being. At one point in the meeting in the Oval Office, President Zelensky actually reached for a folder of photographs that he had brought with him. They showed photos of prisoners of war that had recently been released from Russian captivity. And President Zelensky wanted to use those photographs to really reach Trump on a human level. What we heard in our reporting from American sources is that that point in the meeting is actually where things went awry, where President Trump began to feel not sympathy, but actually put his guard up and made him feel as though he was somehow being blamed for the suffering of Ukrainian soldiers in those photographs. President Zelensky said he didn't have any real regrets about the way he behaved in the Oval Office. Of course, he said that it didn't do anything to improve the relationship and strengthen the alliance between Ukraine and the United States. But he said fundamentally that he was there in that conversation defending the dignity of Ukraine. While reporting on this story here in Kiev, it's been very clear that Russia is not engaging in any kind of ceasefire. Actually, the day before that I met President Zelensky, there was a massive drone attack on Kiev, and I woke up in the middle of the night from the sound of bombs exploding and anti-aircraft fire trying to shoot the Russian drones out of the sky. I asked President Zelensky about that the next day, and I asked him if he's gotten used to those sounds waking him up in the middle of the night, whether they still do shake him awake. And he said that you never really get used to war. You never get used to the kinds of attacks that Russia imposes on Ukraine on a nightly and daily basis. He says even after 3 years of all-out war, yeah, it still shakes him awake. He happened to be on a train returning to Kiev when the latest drone attack happened. He got the air alerts. He got on the phone with the Ukrainian Air Force to try to figure out where the bombing was happening, what to do about it. But fundamentally, it showed him and it showed me in reporting this story that even as the Trump administration is talking to Russia and trying to pursue a ceasefire, Russia is not ceasing its attacks against Ukraine. And Ukraine is firing back. So this is still very much a hot war. In the opinion polls that have come out since the argument in the Oval Office, it's been clear that actually the people of Ukraine have rallied around President Zelensky. His approval rating spiked by around 10% to close to 70% support. And I asked him during the interview why he thought that was. What is it that the Ukrainian people saw in that meeting that Americans may not have seen? Why is it that the Ukrainian people really found his behavior appropriate and a show of strength? And he said that fundamentally, the Ukrainian people, they may be emotional, but when they feel their dignity is under threat, that they're being treated with disrespect, they tend to rally around, unite, and push back. And in doing that in the Oval Office, in holding his head high, he won a great deal of respect from his own people, and I think a lot of people in the United States as well. In his diplomacy, as Ukraine reaches this really critical point in the war, President Zelensky is really focused on trying to convince the United States, and especially President Trump, that Vladimir Putin of Russia cannot be trusted. He is not going to negotiate in good faith, Zelensky says. And already experience has shown that even when Vladimir Putin suggests that he may be open to some kind of peace negotiations, he continues sending his troops and sending his warplanes to bomb Ukrainian cities and attack Ukrainian towns. One avenue for diplomacy that he has used is trying to appeal directly to the American people and to create that kind of grassroots support for Ukraine that might ultimately push President Trump to also show stronger support for Ukraine. But President Zelensky understands that one way or another, he will need to convince President Trump personally that Ukraine is his ally and Russia is not. Of course, the Oval Office meeting was not helpful to President Zelensky in doing that, but in the interview, it was clear that he wants to turn the page and move on. He doesn't see the war as lost, and he does hold out a lot of hope for a just and dignified peace at the end of this peace process that President Trump has initiated.